Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, we're all set. Thank you, Laura. Okay, welcome to the Town of Niskayuna Planning Board and Zoning Commission meeting for December 14th, 2020. Mr. Henry, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme,
Present.
Mr. Screbutenis,
Here.
Mr. Khan,
Here.
Mr. McPartland,
Here.
Mr. Darpino,
Here.
Mr. Oster,
Here. I'd unmute.
Ms. Shenfield,
Here.
Ms. Gold,
Present.
Chairman Walsh.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Okay, we have approval of the minutes from the November 23rd, 2020 meeting that were included in your packet. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, moved by Mr. Oster for approval and seconded by
Seconded.
Mr. Khan.
Scott.
Thank you. All right, any discussion, comments, changes to the minutes? Just have one minor question, I guess maybe. Under line 203, that's on page 5, but you don't need to look. It said Ms. Kim stated. Under also present on page 1, Ms. Kim was not listed. So I'm assuming that maybe she joined the meeting late. I know that Mr. Briggs, I believe, was there. So if Ms. Kim was there, we just add her to also present on page 1.
I don't think I was at that meeting. I think it was Paul Briggs. So perhaps it was either, I'm trying to turn to the page that you just cited. Perhaps
Page 5, line 203.
maybe, yeah, I couldn't have stated it. Maybe unless it was somebody recalling something I'd said at a past meeting.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find what it says. Is that, we gonna change that to Mr. Briggs? Is that what we need to do? I think my computer's slow, so I'm trying to scroll or get to the minutes here. There we go. Got it.
So you said 203?
Yeah, line 203, page 5.
Oh, yeah, you know what? I think that's actually a carryover from the last meeting.
Okay, so we just,
I think we should just strike that whole thing.
I'm okay with that. So we strike line 203.
It should actually, we should strike 201 to 203. I don't think we had COVID-19 updates at that meeting.
Yeah, I know we just talked about them as general business, but so let's, so I'll just make, I guess, a request that we strike lines 201 through 203 as a friendly amendment to the minutes, or change to the minutes. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or changes to minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approval of the minutes as slightly modified signify by saying aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Okay, hearing no one opposed, we'll accept the minutes as slightly modified. We have no public hearings tonight, and we'll go to move the privilege of the floor. Privilege of the floor, Laura, did any requests at all to speak or any emails to be read?
So I did actually get an email from Gail King just not very long ago. I sent it to her. She did. It wasn't a specific request to speak, but I did send her the link as soon as I received it.
Okay. Is it worth reading the email to cover it so we can move forward, or is it cryptic or?
Well, her email, it literally just says to meeting. I'm assuming that means that she wanted to attend the meeting, so I emailed her the link. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. I mean, I try to accommodate all requests. This one came in very last minute, so I can just ask her to put her comments in writing, and then I'll email it all to you guys.
Yep. And then the other thing is, I'm sure she probably wants to talk about the broken in, and we're not taking any action tonight on that. So she'll have another opportunity to be heard here or at the town level at the next town meeting. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we'll move forward. We have no unfinished business tonight. So that'll take us right to new business, which we have 3 resolutions up tonight. first resolution being Resolution 2020-36, a resolution for site plan approval with a use variance for a 6-unit multifamily apartment building at 2721 Balltown Road. And I will summarize that resolution. Resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission hereby determine that this project will not have a significant effect on the environment, and hereby directs the town planner to file a negative secret declaration for the site plan. Resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds the above referenced site plan meets the requirements of the zoning code, and therefore hereby approves the site plan and tenant change with the following conditions. 1, the final parking lot configuration and curb cut onto Balltown Road shall be provided to the Planning Board for review and approval at a future date, and such configuration shall comply with the points identified in the letter authored by Mr. Robert E. Rice Jr., PE, Regional Program and Planning Manager of the State of New York, of the New York State Department of Transportation, dated December 2, 2020. And condition number 2, Mr. Ritmo will work with the Architectural Review Board on facade upgrades and building modifications at 2721 Balltown Road to give it a more residential feel in harmony with the neighboring properties in this predominantly residential zoning district. And that's the resolution. Do I have a motion for adoption? Mr. DiArpino?
I so move for adoption.
Okay, moved by Mr. DiArpino. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Khan. Thank you, Mr. Khan. And we'll have some discussion. David, you want to take it from here?
Sure. Since the last meeting, Mr. Ritmo, he received a letter from the DOT with their review, and it resulted in having a single curb cut along Balltown Road, which would thus eliminate the south parking lot and consolidate everything to the north parking lot. So in that time frame, Alex was able to work with his architect to get us a drawing this week that reflects that. That still has to be a little bit refined, but I think the overall intent is shown on the site plan that was included in the packet. And we also had a conversation this week. I spoke with Mr. Ritmo, and he is on the docket for this Wednesday's Architectural Review Board to have them take a look at the exterior elevations and discuss what his overall intent is for outside improvements, look at some of the window fenestration, and possibly focusing on the front colonnade area and the front facade. And that's a summary of where we are.
Okay, Dave. The one comment I guess I have is, we received the update. Mr. Henry and others have pointed out that the date is the same date as the original. There's no revision number on the drawing, and that it's stamped not for construction. I believe something along those lines. I don't have it in front of me. So this resolution, condition 1, states that he has to return to the planning board at a future date to rectify that. I just want to throw this out to Dave and everybody. We could modify condition 1 to say that, if we're happy with the layout, Dave, we had an opportunity to take a look at it, that instead of coming back to the planning board, he could just make those changes and come back to the planning department for their review to make sure it's correct. And that would save the applicant coming back to the planning board. But I just want to throw that out there for discussion. What do you think, Dave?
I'm fine with that option of amending it.
Is the planning office okay with that?
Yeah, we put both drawings in there because we received the one that has a single curb cut onto Balltown Road kind of late, but we're happy with the one curb cut, and we're okay with just making any final changes administratively.
Okay, and I think again those changes include the revision date on the drawing, so to keep everything correct because they're all dated the same, right? And all right, so then I'll make a proposal that we modify condition 1, strike planning board for review and approval at a future date, and change that to planning department for review at a future date. And then if Mr. Ritmo makes the changes that are in compliance with the DOT letter, and Mr. Henry and Ms. Robertson are okay with that, we can bring it to closure and he won't have to come back to the planning board again. Does that sound reasonable? And if it is, can I have I'll make that motion. Can I have a second?
Yeah. I'll second.
Yeah, and seconded by Mr. DiArpino. Any concerns with that? Any other discussion on a resolution as modified? Okay, all those in favor of the resolution just being modified, not the final resolution, the modification of resolution, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Anyone opposed to the modifications? Any other comments? Any questions? You okay with that, Alex?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Then we'll just vote on the resolution then. All those, Mr. Kennedy, please call the roll.
Mr. Laflamme,
Aye.
Mr. Scributinus,
Aye.
Mr. Khan,
Aye.
Mr. McPartlin,
Aye.
Mr. Darpino,
Aye.
Mr. Oster,
Aye.
Chairman Walsh.
Aye. Okay, the resolution is approved. Alex, you're all set to move forward. We wish you luck with the apartments, and we'll be here to continue helping you if you need any help, okay?
Okay, thank you, guys.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you to the board for that. Okay, we'll move on then. Under new business again, the second resolution we have tonight is Resolution 2020-37, a resolution for site plan approval of a tenant change at 408 Balltown Road, and that's Maurice's. Again, I'll summarize. Resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds the above referenced site plan meets the requirements of the zoning code and previous site plan approvals, and therefore hereby approves the site plan and tenant change with the following conditions. 1, new signage associated with the tenant change to Maurice's will be addressed at a future date with a separate Planning Board action. Do I have a motion on that resolution?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Oster for adoption. Do I have a second?
I second it.
And seconded by Mr. Laflamme. Thank you. And discussion.
I presume this is a simple tenant change in like the most expansive zoning district we have.
Right.
Yes, and we do have a representative of the applicant.
Yeah. And this is the first time we're seeing this, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I think Leslie, do you want to talk? Oh, there you are. Yep.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I
Yes.
couldn't get my mouse to work. For this, we're not changing anything on the exterior of the store except for the signage, and the interior is truly just a minor
says,
tenant. I'm sorry.
There we go. Yeah, I just didn't know if you had any, and wanted to get brief as at all or make any comments regarding the resolution or the proposal to relocate Maurice's at all. Anything you'd like to state or add?
No.
No? Okay. I got a question for the planning department, and that is, says that we'll address signage at a future date. If the signage submitted is compliant with the ordinance, it wouldn't need to come back to the planning board. Is that a true statement, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, basically, if it fits within the square that has been previously approved, and the guidance in the zoning district, it wouldn't. But if there's really any changes to it, like it changes this, except for making it less, but if it changes the square that's approved or they add anything, they would need to come back to the planning board or zoning board.
All right, so I'd like to propose a modification that we just add something along the fact at the end of the condition, if required, or if the signage is not compliant with the town municipal requirements, one or the other, just or if required. So they don't need to come back if the building permit, if it's submitted and it's meets the standard, we're all set. So how about we just do a friendly modification, just say if required. Is that okay with everybody? Maybe you can just signify by saying aye.
Yes. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have.
And I'd just like to verify. Can you guys hear
So
me?
modified, okay. All right, so,
Maurice
sorry,
is
go ahead, Mr.
moving.
Khan, sorry.
And, I'm sorry. No, yeah. So I don't know if you guys are experiencing it, but there's a major video and audio lag for me. But Maurice is just moving into the Metro Mattress area, right? From next to Target or wherever it is down there. Correct? So
Yes.
that place becomes vacant now.
yes,
So that whole block of Bed Bath and Beyond up until Maurice, and I think there's one other business still in business there, right? A foot place, right?
Well, actually, I think Carter's is still over there. Or did Carter's? Leslie, do you know that? Because Maurice's and Carter's are like sisters.
I don't know
Yeah.
what else over there. I know when we took the
Okay,
letter,
all right.
the
I'm just
other
asking, but this is a move of an existing business within the. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Obviously, we hope that the storefront gets filled sooner or later, of course. All right, Mr. Henry, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme,
Aye.
Mr. Screbutenis,
Aye.
Mr. Khan,
Aye.
Mr. McPartlin,
Aye.
Mr. Darpino,
Aye.
Mr. Oster,
Aye.
Chairman Walsh.
Aye. The resolution as modified is adopted. Thank you, everyone, and good luck with the relocation of the business. Hopefully it works out for you, okay?
Thank you, everyone. Have a great holiday.
Okay, thank you. You too. All right, and we have one more resolution tonight, and that's Resolution 2020-38. A resolution to make a secret determination and call for a public hearing for a 4-lot minor subdivision at 2627 Troy Schenectady Road. And that resolution states, resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission hereby determine that this project will not have a significant effect on the environment and hereby directs the town planner to file a negative secret declaration with the following comments. 1, the dedication and preservation of open space is critical to this proposal. The town should follow through to ensure there is a connection between the dedicated new open space and the Leisure Nature Preserve. 2, the applicant shall preserve as many trees as possible. 3, a split rail fence shall be installed along the perimeter of the open space to delineate it from private property and protect its boundaries over time. 4, the applicant shall take additional care to preserve trees on steep slopes and take careful consideration of soil erosion and sediment control in these areas. Mr. McPartlin, do I have a motion on the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I move for adoption.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. McPartlin for adoption. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Mr. Screbutenis. And discussion on the resolution. Pretty straightforward. Been a lot of work here. Do you have anything, Mr. McPartlin? There's a little bit of, like Mr. Khan said, a little bit of a lag. I'm sorry.
Nothing really. You know, the CAC recommended the negative declaration. We have some conditions in this resolution, which I think really enforce preserving the woodland nature of the parcel and accomplishing the goals with open space that all of us have discussed. No changes to the site plan that we reviewed from the last meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Has the planning department received any? Just somebody trying to talk there. Has the planning department received any additional concerns or anything new from the neighbors or anything? Or is it pretty much where we left off?
No, I think the critical thing for the neighbors is to really site those driveways and homes in a way that maintains as much of the forest along, Shannon Boulevard as they can. And we discussed it at the tree council meeting a couple days ago. And tree council is going to do a site walk and take a look because I believe that Joel has now kind of like staked where the approximate corners of the homes would be and driveways. So the tree council is going to go out there and take another look at it and really do their best with the situation, that's out there.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
The other thing that the tree council is going to look at, which you guys may or may not care, but when we walked out there, there's just enormous oaks on that steep slope. And the tree council is going to try and bring in an expert to see if they're potentially old growth. And then potentially the town could get, recognition or just for its own sake, recognize that they're trying to preserve as much as they can of some pretty unique habitat. And then I also did hear a comment of concern from someone about how steep the slope is along the existing path and the open space that's being dedicated to the town, how steep the slope is from that path down to the Leisha. You know, I'm concerned that we're putting the split rail fence between the open space and the private property. But when the town gets to the point where they're looking at developing a trail, or the Nature Conservancy looks at developing a trail, to just be really sensitive to the fact that that's a pretty steep slope, and think about putting, you know, anywhere from, and, you know, I was saying probably a split rail fence, but really look at it when you're doing like trail development to see, you know, what is necessary to make that slope safer.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Mr. Henry, please call the roll.
Mr. Laflamme,
Aye.
Mr. Screbutenis,
Aye.
Mr. Khan,
Aye.
Mr. McPartlin,
Aye.
Mr. D'Arpino,
Aye.
Mr. Oster,
Aye.
Chairman Walsh.
Aye. The resolution's approved. And before we move on to discussion items, one additional thing, since this isn't down for discussion, we did receive a request from the applicant, Mr. Bezoin, whether we could have a tentative resolution for the January 11th meeting, about a month away. So I just wanted to have a quick discussion on that and see what folks think. I did talk to Laura when I logged on a little while ago. I think the planning department's concern is it's a unique property there from an erosion and sediment control. And so she wants to make sure that at least some engineering is addressed, you know, and not have, you know, and since she'd like to ensure, but we do have a month. So the question I have is, should we call for a tentative resolution since it's a month, and, you know, basically have Laura contact the applicant saying, you know, we have a tentative resolution, but you need to get, you know, some engineering in and address the planning department's concerns and our concerns. And if they can do that in a timely fashion, we'll have the resolution. But if they can't do that, we will have to pull or table the resolution. So I just wanted to get Mr. McPartlin and the rest of the board's thoughts on that, whether that's worthwhile or whether we should hold out.
Are we anticipating kind of a similar amount of comment that we received in previous? I know the plan's been moved from what it is changed from what it originally was, but I know sometimes, even though logically it sometimes makes sense to do it in the same meeting, sometimes I think there is a perceptual aspect of something for which has some controversy. Again, I know the project has been changed from where it originally was.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, I think I'm going to generally agree with Mr. Oster. I think that given both the level of comments we've heard from the neighborhood before, and also given the engineering need that the bare minimum requirements that need to be there, and that actually our next meeting is probably going to be 2 weeks away from that anyway, right? In January, I think, right, Laura? So my recommendation would be to just stick to the plan, get the public hearing, and have the resolution for the following meeting. But I mean, you know, Mr. McPartlin can chime in too, obviously.
Yep.
I'm in agreement on that timeline.
Okay. Just want to throw it out there. So, you know, I respect those comments, and you can let Joel know next time, Laura, you talk to him, that we're going to proceed on a normal schedule and get his engineering done. And that would put him probably in the second meeting in January for tentative approval, right?
Right. And just one quick thing, just going back to the topic, Laura, of the new slopes, the slopes at the new connection to the Leisha Hill. So is stairs going to be the only option that's going to make that safe, or are there other options?
So I have had a couple good discussions with the Nature Conservancy, and I know that Kevin's preference is that, you know, the town really turn it over to the Nature Conservancy because they're kind of the experts at trail building and can really like figure this stuff out. But I'm not sure, like, if it would be stairs or what it would be to get, you know, through those steep slopes, because it's not only on our side, it's also actually when you go along. I know a couple of you guys have walked out there. When you go along to actually hit the Nature Conservancy property, there's another steep slope. So, I mean, it's beautiful. You have like these amazing vistas like over the Leisha, but you have these steep slopes that you have to work with for sure.
Okay, I mean, the main reason I asked is, you know, if we got a little bit more definition as to what actually would be the solution and the amount of work there, is there anything that Joel actually could do to make that better, whatever the end result would be, right? Whatever the end solution would be.
Maybe, and that's really good, right? So that the town isn't paying for it as much as the developer, not that, you know, that there's a balance so that there's the public benefit is there and that we're not incurring like undue cost. Yeah. Maybe a good thing to do is like I could email Joel and maybe Patrick and the guy from the Nature Conservancy and see if we could schedule a time to meet out there and get his input on kind of like what it would take to get the trail there and see if there's something that he could give us good direction as a planning board and give Joel, you know, and kind of get a sense of where he could land on that. I think that's worthwhile.
I agree with what you said. I mean, I don't want to make extra work or create any extra steps, but it's just if we have a, you know, we're dealing with these slopes just because of the reconfiguration that took place, right? Now it's all good. It's just to make sure that we've got a line of sight to making it something that is usable for the public, for the residents, the neighbors there.
Okay, let me write that down. I think that's a really good idea.
I've got a question, just procedurally, if and when the board considers a resolution for final plat approval, can it be conditioned? Will these conditions included in our resolution today be carried over to the final plat?
You can if you want. Those conditions were for seeker, specific to limiting the environmental impacts, or at least noting, you know, what was important to limiting the environmental impacts. But if there's something specific that you would want carried over, you could certainly ask, like, for instance, the split rail fence. I mean, that's important for an environmental aspect, but the planning board has often dictated split rail fences, like on the edges of wetlands, stuff like that. So that would be perfectly appropriate to carry over. You know, you could actually carry all of them over, but they wouldn't necessarily automatically carry over because they're specific for seeker.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, so when we get to the point to start drafting that resolution, Mr. McPartland, you have an opportunity to take a look at it, make sure all the conditions that we need are there, and we'll talk about it again, possibly at the next meeting. Okay. Anything else on the subject? We'll move on to the other discussion items. Everybody's okay then? Okay, so the other discussion items. First is 2207, 2209 Knott Street, the site plan application for a tenant change, and that this is the broken in, excuse me. I guess, Dave, you want to talk about that, or?
So I think the focus of this discussion item is mostly the parking, correct?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So Tommy did include a diagram plan that dedicates or shows 21 parking spaces configured around the corner. And I know that Lang's Pharmacy had sent a letter in previously about the number of spaces they thought that they could provide at that end of the buildings and around the corner on Clifton Park. So I think a lot of it is going to come down to the discussion of how much parking do we think that, you know, the restaurant is going to need at certain times, and how far we'll expand beyond where these dedicated 21 spaces are.
Yes. Thanks, Dave. I know I just speak for myself. I've been up and down on this one because I just have concern to make sure the parking is appropriate. Because what's unique here, and I think this is where we need to land our discussion, is that for most businesses in the highway commercial require one space for every 200 square feet. But the bar gets special dispensation because it's considered a multi-use shopping center, which allows it to go from the normal 50 square foot required for each parking space to the 200, like the rest of the types of businesses that are in this shopping center. So it really boils down to the multi-use shopping center, which we do not have a definition for in the code. I didn't see one, at least, Laura. I tried to take a look. So if we agree that this is a multi-use shopping center, my view is that the spots that are designated exceed the requirements of a multi-use shopping center, which would be on the order of, you take a look at all of, well, if you take a look at the broken in, it would be 7 spots, right? That's 1308 square feet divided by the 200, which gives us only 7 spots. And obviously 20, was it 21 or 22 are shown on the, 21 are shown on the diagram there. Again, it's just whether or not we all agree that it's a multi-use shopping center. I will note that that if you take a look at the other parking spots, you just kind of do a quick, that's about so many square feet. Everything seems to make sense there from, you know, the other businesses that are next to the proposed broken in, you know, the liquor store, the postal store, because they have some parking out back and they have the parking out front. And I think if you kind of run the numbers, they're pretty darn close, if not exactly on what they require utilizing those spots. So again, it just really boils down to the term multi-use shopping center. I can speak because I've been around a while. You know, when we've done Mohawk Commons, when we've done Mansion Square, those things were conceived right at the beginning as a shopping center. So it's very easy to make that determination where this site is a bit historic. So we're kind of backfitting a little bit here. So if we all agree it's a multi-use shopping center, it looks like it exceeds the requirements for shared parking as proposed.
I guess just a basic question: if we don't designate it as or understand it to be a multi-use shopping center, what do we understand it to be? Just a restaurant or a bar?
Right, and which would require 27 parking spaces.
Okay.
And again, there's 21 shown. You know, if you want to have the gold standard, the answer would be if you had support of other businesses that said, you know, it's okay to park here, and then we would exceed, you know, the requirements, and there'd be no concern at all. But if you concur that it's a multi-use shopping center, the spots identified are part of that complex of buildings associated with the pharmacy. What's the one business in the back there?
Sewing.
Sewing.
The tailor. Yeah.
Yep, the tailor. Just trying to find it. And it works on that level. I know.
So
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Laura, is there a shared parking agreement across these businesses? Do they have any easements, cross easements across all these different tax lots?
They don't have cross easements. My understanding is they do share in the cost of like snow removal, some of them. And they do have some kind of agreements with, you know, how the parking lot is maintained over time. But there's no cross easements because majority of the parking is in the county right of way. And it will be preserved with the county plan, but it's not directly owned, so you can't give easements.
Yeah, you know, I emailed David earlier, I don't know, earlier in the week or last week. So I spent some time, you know, really looking at this. And again, it all comes down to the definition. And if it's per 200 square feet, you know, hey, there's no problem here. If we all agree to that, there shouldn't be any issue.
And if we were to not consider them a multi-use shopping center, Chairman Walsh, you said that then the required parking would have been 27 spots?
27 is what I come up with, yes.
So Laura, is it, and Chairman Walsh, do we have it might be about close to 25%. Do we have a waiver option available to us?
We do, I mean, we do waiver and we do, you know, request cross easements. But, and Alexis can jump in here. I would caution you in any like determination of whether or not, you know, that is a freestanding restaurant or a multi-use shopping center, you'd have to be really clear if you felt that it qualified, you know, under the other section of code, because the planning department has determined that it's a freestanding, or sorry, that it's a multi-use shopping center. So if you were going to overrule the planning department, which is fine, for the record, you should be clear, because it could easily be, you know, like appealed to the zoning board. So you would not want to lay out why you disagreed with our determination.
But that applies, then that designation applies to all businesses in that area,
well,
right?
I mean, I can pull up the code. It's very interesting. I mean, yes, I consider it to be a multi-use shopping center because the businesses are all connected very closely. They share parking, and there's different types of uses amongst the buildings. But where the restaurant parking is very specific is actually in the code, in the CN code itself. It specifically calls out restaurants, and I can bring it up for you if you want to see, comma, in a multi, use shopping center. So it's very specific to restaurants. If you were to look at the Parcel Post Plus or the Knott Street office, they're retail. So they're just going to get, one divided, or, for every square footage, they're going to get divided by 225. This gets something very specific because it's restaurant in a multi-use shopping area.
How do we handle like the Thai Bistro, and then before that Smash Burger? Like what's that considered to be?
Those ones, they don't have a parking sign. I don't even think that we necessarily calculated the parking because when that plaza went in, it specifically allowed like restaurants, and so that parking lot was like kind of parceled out and numbered, knowing that those is because it's very similar, right? So, and actually, if you consider, I would say that we treated it essentially the same way, because if you look at it, when we've built those parking lots over in ShopRite, it's retail restaurant over there is like, it's the difference between 200 and 225 if you're looking at a mixed use shopping district. So the parking lot is essentially going to fit those things.
Coming back, Laura. I'm sorry, Chairman Welch. I'll wait.
I was going to say with that, of course, that was designed as a shopping center, right? With all those square footage there, and like Laura says, the uses weren't all maybe completely identified at the time of construction, and so we know they share parking there. If you're going in a restaurant, somebody's not going to come out because you're parked over in front of the dollar store and say, hey, move your car. I don't think the planning department has gotten any complaints or code enforcement regarding that, and so it's a little bit different because this is an older complex, right? Again, I'm in a better spot. I know when I talked to, emailed David, I was really concerned, but after looking at it, hard regarding the ownership portion of it, the part that the pharmacy owns and is leasing to the Broken Inn, they have 21 parking spots there. The only thing I want to prevent, is a concern where everybody wants to put signs up, for instance, and saying, parking only for Parcel Post Plus here, or parking only for the liquor store. And then we have a sea of signs. I want the shopping complex to be able to work in harmony without any issues. That's all.
So this is the distinction here. Restaurants sit down or take out in multi-use shopping centers with shared parking facilities. And that's the determination that we made. And, if it was just considered a freestanding restaurant, it would be one space for each 50. This is one space for each 200. And that's because there's theoretically complementary uses and things. So you're trying we don't want to create on-street parking and burden to the neighborhood, but you're also trying not to create seas of parking lots that are detrimental to to property values and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for bringing this up, Laura, because I didn't appreciate it when looking at the package before. But so the key thing is the planning department has deemed this area multi-use shopping designation then for a restaurant and a multi-use shopping at the 1/200 parking rate.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was really, what we need to discuss. I mean, there's other concerns from that we've heard, right? Noise, which we have to trust that the applicant's going to run a good business and have no reason to doubt that he will, right? Lighting, which we'll address, just like during site plan review. Signage we'll take care of, and parkings. And that's why we need to have this discussion on parking. Last thing we want is to have issues there. Again, I'm in a better spot than where I was after, really looking hard at things. The other thing I did is I pulled up the county, one of the latest revisions that I could find in my email that Laura provided me some time ago, just to see if there would be a decrease over where we're at now. And it looks like, if anything, it's pretty much a wash. It looks like almost 1-for-1 was what I got out of it. So that was promising for me also, that the future, if they go with that design, because I don't believe it's been completely finalized and engineered, but it looks like it's doesn't change the parking, total parking spots that we're discussing tonight. So, we don't have to, we're not taking any action on this tonight. It's just a discussion. So,
Yeah, whatever it's worth. I mean, given everything that's said and what Laura displayed from the code, I mean, I think it's appropriate classifying it as a restaurant and a multi-use shopping center.
okay.
However, I think the chairman raised a really good point to avoid and to prevent kind of challenges to usage in the future. We should think through basically when will be the maximum utilization of parking in any given business day, right? So I think is the 6 to 8 p.m. period of time when there's going to be a concentration and overlap of parkers, meaning we'll have parkers at the co-op and at the at Lang's. I think we should think through the practicalities of what happens at these kind of maximum usage times and how the parking will lay out.
I mean, for me, I think the biggest troublesome spot is the Saturday hours, which is 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., right? Am I reading that correct?
Yeah, those are correct hours.
Yeah. That's when the restaurant's planning on being open on Saturday, right?
Yeah, he has stated that he would do a brunch. That's why he has the earlier hours on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah. I mean, the Sunday ones, because Sunday's a candidate too, because I actually forgot who else is open there other than the co-op on a Sunday. But definitely Saturday looks like it could be the pinch point day.
Yep, potentially, yeah.
I mean, practically thinking, right? We're going to see people parking in the co-op parking lot. And will that be police? Will that be patrolled? Will there be challenges to people parking in the co-op parking lot and walking down? I mean, we just have to, know that when it comes to parking, people will park in any available spot because they're not going to know where title is. They're not going to know who owns what building. I mean, I've parked in front of the liquor store and shopped at the co-op. I'm sure we've all done similar things. So.
Yep.
And I think, Mr. Shriverton, is this part of the discussion is, I think, more from the practical side in terms of just what the finite number of parking spots that you have available to you are, not so much so from how we ever redesignate it, right?
Yeah, it's just, we have any concerns whether it's going to function, that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the applicant stated before that he received support from the co-op. Of course, that support wasn't explicit and said, hey, I don't, I'm not going to, I don't have any concerns whether they park in the co-op. It didn't go to that level of detail. Obviously, it'd be nice to have that level of detail.
Yeah, and so maybe to cover the practical base issue that we're raising is that we probably do need a letter like that from the co-op, recognizing that.
You can say we already kind of asked for that and hinted to that, I guess, or kind of asked for it. But without that, we can't, we should go forward not expecting that, I guess,
I think the co-op's position is that they're supportive of the business. They're not going to weigh in immediately on the parking issue because they do own the lot across the street and the side lot.
Right.
So those are part of their parcel.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of fairness to us, and I'm hoping I'm not missing anything, but this is the first time actually we're seeing parking lot drawn in and counted, right, in our discussions on this, right? So
correct.
So now I think so again, depending on how we classify it, and the classification I think that's there in the code for restaurant and multi-use will be fine, but I think there's still the practical aspect of during those Saturday hours and a nice, spring or summer day. Right, with all businesses open in that area, I think there can be conceivable stress to the parking there.
Well, again, I don't have to be stressed, but there'll be parking, possibly in the co-op or in the other spots as mentioned. So we just have to be aware of that, because it's all shared parking, right? It's all a multi-use shopping center. So.
Just a quick point. In front of Lang's Pharmacy, I guess something that I've always observed is oftentimes the owners of Lang's have 1 to 2 of their vehicles out there, I think for advertising purposes, and there, whether it's, around the clock, whether it's open or not. So I guess that is just kind of one thought that I had too. In those identified parking spots, are 1 to 2 of them always going to be occupied and even available?
Well, we could, in order to address that, we could ask the applicant to specify where employee and kind of owner parking would be, to see if there's off space available or if they intend to occupy some of those 21 parking spots. We could get that clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at the pharmacy and Broken Inn and was it the tailor shop or whatever it is in the back there, if you do the square footage for them at 200 square feet, it comes to like 18 parking spots are required for that complex, that set of buildings, right? Not including the co-op or that. And again, 21 are shown. And that's why again I kept looking at this, trying to reason it to myself that I'm comfortable with the parking. And again, that works if you look at it that way also. So it's almost like a mini multi-use shopping center, which is basically those three businesses. Fortunately, the pharmacy is on the end, right? It has that parking around the building. It'd be a different story if, say, the postal store or the liquor store were to become a bar restaurant. It would be much more. I don't know if it would work there, right? But on the end, it looks like it appears like it works.
I just wanted to clarify the shared parking is along the fronts of the businesses, but the co-op actually owns its parking lot across the street. So while there may be some incidental parking to the co-op that occurs like because they're on a semi-regular basis because they're good neighbors, we couldn't say that the co-op parking lot is included in the shared parking because it isn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't think we're saying that. We're saying we'd love the co-op to weigh in, saying that they're okay with the parking if it were to happen to occur, which we may not, obviously yet. All right. Well, we don't have to reach a decision. We just want to have some discussion. If anybody else has any other thoughts on it, I mean, it has to go to the town board still. I believe it'll be on the agenda is that meeting later this week, Laura?
Yeah, it's December 22nd. Is the scheduled vote for the special use permit. And the one thing that I heard that I think I can get clarification from the applicant on if they, if where they're considering employee parking.
All right. And, once, the town board, if they approve the special use permit, they might have conditions. We don't know, where they stand. And if not, we still want to do a good job to prevent any future problems with parking. So, and we can do that. We can work through it. But, so anybody, think about it. If anybody has any concerns, we'll talk about it again.
Hey, Laura. Oh, sorry, Chairman Walsh. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just had one question, Laura. I know that we had so much discussion about the changing to parking in this area in connection with the Schenectady County's Not Street Improvement Plan. Do you know if they're still on track to be completing that in the spring, such that that should be, a consideration at the, after the special use permit is approved in terms of?
I think you have to keep the item separate because obviously the town, any improvements that the town's making to the parking areas involved are public and not, to the benefit of any specific, proposal that we're looking at. And then to the extent that the Schenectady County improvements are in the Schenectady County right of way only, and the town is looking at concept plans for Clifton Park Crescent and some traffic calming in the area, but those are still only concept, and probably it would depend on engineering and funding on how we would be able to implement the concept plans. So, I mean, Schenectady County's changes to the right of way, like Kevin said, are not going to necessarily take away any painted parking lots. There is an informal parking lot across the street, which is, the county has said they didn't authorize, they don't agree with, that is going to not continue to be there. But they don't consider that formal parking, and we don't consider that in any of our parking calculations either. But I would say, any of the designated formal parking spots, they're maintaining them. They're not taking them away. So you wouldn't see any loss of parking space in the shared parking areas. But I would say that generally speaking, they're disconnected. If we can add parking through the process, we absolutely will, to the public benefit. But we wouldn't evaluate this proposal with the hope that another proposal down the line will add parking.
I guess my question was just a little bit more tailored. Is the Not Street Improvement Project, is it changing the number of parking spots than it is now? I know that they're making it like the parking lots. They're redoing parking so that you're, not going to be backing out.
No, I took a look at that just before the meeting, and it looks like it's a 1-for-1 from my math, pretty much. So, because that was, one of my concerns, and it looks like we should have an equivalent number of parking spaces based on the last concept that I saw. Obviously, that's not the final engineering, but it looked pretty good. Because, I was trying to see if there was any concerns that I had, and it seemed to be okay. All right. All right, so we'll just keep an eye on it, think about it. Again, I've kind of flopped a little bit here because looking harder at it, closely at it, based on the location of an ownership of the pharmacy, Langs, where it's located at the west end there, and parking around the perimeter, it appears like it'll work. They just have a concern. Just want to make sure we talk about it. Okay. And we'll see what the town board has to say, and whether or not they condition, if they approve it, whether or not they have any conditions that we need to work through. Okay. Anything else on this subject? Anything else, David? Is that fair? I appreciate the discussion. Okay, all set?
All set.
Okay, thank you, Dave. All right. Let's see. Next discussion item is 398 Aqueduct Road site plan application for a carport by J-Dog Junk Removal, and I believe we have the applicant, Ms. Gagnon, on the line, and Mr. Laflamme has agreed to be the project lead on this, and this is basically a kickoff for that tonight. So maybe Ms. Gagnon, are you there?
Yes, hello, we are here. It's me and my son Kyle.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, and we're at 398 Anthony Street, not Aqueduct, just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was just reading from the, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and do you want to talk about your proposals? Just summarize it.
Yeah, sure. So we really basically we're J-Dog Junk Removal and Hauling, and we have probably 7 trucks.
Yep.
We have 7 trucks. What we do is we do junk removal throughout the community, not just Niskayuna, but Albany, Schenectady, Troy, Glens Falls, Saratoga, all that. We bring our stuff back to our shop. We sort through it. We donate. We repurpose, reuse, resell, whatever we can. We work with a bunch of the local charities. We work with
Veterans Miracle Center.
the Veterans Miracle Center in Albany. Sorry, Mondays are always long days, and we work with the Saratoga County Housing Association or Authority for Homeless Veterans, and we work with the Home Store, and we work with a couple other different places. Right now, we're having a problem because a lot of the places are closed down because of COVID. They're not like readily just accepting stuff. Like they want you to bring it back. They want you to store it. They want you to hold it. They want it disinfected, which I completely understand. And we just don't want to dump all this stuff in a landfill because it's good stuff. And it's just a terrible use of our landfills. So we wanted to put up a carport, and only a carport, no front, no garage doors, no windows, no door, nothing like that, just a carport. So that when we come back at night, especially in the winter, if it's snowing, we can just back these trucks into this carport and all this good stuff won't get wet, because at 5 o'clock at night, we might not have a place to put it in our warehouse. So it gets all soaking wet. The other thing then it gets ruined, and then we do have to dump it. The other thing is that it's causing a big weight issue for us, because once something gets wet, water is extremely heavy. So it's causing a huge weight issue for us. Even if it's stuff that we know has to be dumped, once it's wet or frozen, something like that, it just weighs so much more, and it's so much harder to work with and has a bigger impact on landfills.
And the way we mitigated that problem in the past, both those issues, was that we used to park our trucks in the building overnight, especially during the winter months. But with the charities taking less stuff, we've sectioned off more of our warehouse space for the stuff that's going to them. So we really need spots to put the trucks that isn't in the building, so we have more space to hold on to good material and also keep the material from getting soaking wet or rained on or snowed on.
And then another problem we ran into quickly was just that people found out where we're located. We're located at the end of a dirt road. So we're like the last building. We're right across from Jackson Demolition or Jackson.
Yeah.
Jackson Demolition. And so what happens is we'll come back on a Saturday afternoon, and all the transfer stations close at 11:30, and we don't have enough room in our hub anymore. and we'll have a truck that's half full. We'll come back to work on Monday and it's full. So people have found where because they're open trucks, right? They have they're high 5-foot sides, but people have been dumping stuff in them. It would just be better all the way around for us and even for our property, because now the trucks won't just be in the middle of the property. They'll be tucked in, like, let's say, put to bed every night, not just hanging out in the middle of the property.
So the one question I do have is, for everything that you've mentioned, both in terms of the weather, and I saw the drawings of it, is that carport going to be sufficient the way you've depicted it? From
you mean
sideways falling rain, wind blowing rain, snow.
So it does have it's got the sides are enclosed, the front is open.
Okay.
So if we back the trucks in, which is what we plan on doing, the front of the trucks are still high because they're big Isuzus, and it's got a roof over it, so it should completely mitigate any water, snow, anything.
Okay.
We made sure to Mr. Henry, I sent all the specs, and I had sent everything, and we made sure that it exceeded the limits for. Exceeded the limits.
So it'll only have one opening in the right. So the only opening will be the front. It's all their sides are closed on the roof.
Correct. And we went with
okay,
a dark green and black to try and make it blend with the environment.
What material are you making the roof out of?
The whole structure is made out of steel.
Okay.
Oh, yep, and that's where it would go, right across that back there. I don't know which one. Right across here. They can't. Okay.
Another quick question too, along the lines of Mr. Khan. Is it, just so we understand, is it anchored down?
Yes.
With bolts, or is it weighted with concrete? How is it going to be fastened to the earth?
So there's so it's an actual manufacturer and install company that does this a lot. When I was reading over the thing, I didn't see how it is. I believe it's a bolt. It's not a concrete fasten, but I'm not exactly sure. But we can get that answer.
So what they
is fastened.
Yeah. What they needed from us was to have the ground graded and leveled and new stone put in. So that's what we did. We already did that. We did Mark Myers. We had them come in. It had to be level within 3 inches, and then they come in and it was part of whatever I think of Mr. Henry. They have a way that they secure it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So you're basically buying a commercial installation of a steel structure carport.
Absolutely
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not doing this ourselves.
No.
Is that the company you're buying it from, Star, or
the actual
Star Metal Buildings?
The actual company we were planning on purchasing it from is called Carport Central, and I believe that one is either the middle engineering or the middle manufacturing, the one who sent those.
Okay. And when were you plan if everything looks? I mean, if this does go forward, what's your timeline on this?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. The earliest we were looking at, depending on your guys' approval, was going to be late December, early January, if that was a reasonable time for you guys to have this turned around and approved.
See, we didn't realize that it was going to be. Honestly, I thought COVID was going to be over by now. So by the time the winter hit, I thought we were going to be okay to start farming out all the stuff that we collect back to the donation centers. And that didn't happen. Then we started jumping through the hoops, trying to figure out what we were going to do, vice putting all this stuff in a transfer station, which I just won't do.
Seems like a pretty workable solution.
And
quick.
And since you've cited a bunch of reasons, I think beyond just COVID, it might just be a better option, especially if people are using your trucks as their donation dump, right?
People are, well, they're not even throwing donation stuff in there, they're throwing junk.
Yeah. Short-term COVID might have made us jump to this decision, but this is definitely better for us as a business and better for the nature and the society and our society in general as far as we operate. It's definitely a positive all around.
So Laura, do we have what's our most significant issue that we'll need to work through on this one?
The setbacks.
So Clark was working with them pretty specifically on setbacks. We reviewed it. We had to have them add them into the plan. There's a couple other dimensions they need to add. And then just the visual aspect, as long as it doesn't go over 15 feet and it meets the bulk zoning requirements. If you guys would want to see any screening around it, or if you feel like that area is pretty acceptable for like for a steel structure carport like that, just kind of the normal planning things. So as long, and I do think they are meeting their setbacks. So just setbacks and aesthetics mostly.
Yeah, just to comment on the things you mentioned, Laura, I didn't have a chance to go back today, but I've been down recently. I was there originally with Mr. Gagnon walking the site. It's well shielded, on the backside. There's really not a visual impact to the neighborhood. It's going to add protection. The setbacks are well within what our guidelines are, so it's really rather well thought out. And I think it was even a potential plan way back when we originally spoke about the issues of what you do with stuff overnight or for a couple of days due to a delay and et cetera. So it was not a surprise to see this come before us, and it seems like a pretty good remedy for the situation.
Yeah, and that's what I meant, because I looked at the drawing. I mean, it seems as depicted that, other than the aesthetics, right? There should not be another issue, right?
No.
I think we even paid extra for the dark green so that it would blend, because behind us is nothing until you get to the trail, that aqueduct trail there. There's no other houses or buildings on our left. Well, depends on what side of the road you're on, but there's that little stream right there, and then there's nothing until you get to the trail, and you can't see the trail from our property.
Right.
And then there's nothing behind us. There's
Right.
not another building. I think it's
And,
wet.
and there's no putting in of any further. That's still gravel, right? It'll remain gravel, no
It
impervious
is.
surface.
Correct.
Not paid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, my input is that the request seems reasonable and warranted. If it follows all the setbacks and everything, those are the primary things. Based on the location, I don't think it'll be intrusive at all. The only question I had was, I think it's stated 14 foot high in the package, and Laura, as she mentioned, it's 15 foot is the major accessory structure height limit. So I just had a question for the applicant. The opening for the doorway to go on in, to back the trucks in, how tall are your trucks, and will it fit okay with the proposal that you have?
So a couple of our trucks have slightly different heights, but they're all below 11-foot clearance.
Yeah, we could even go under those bridges on 146.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Yeah.
You can always run that test on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me tell you, we were careful about that.
Okay, so it'll work, the 15-foot height, 15-foot proposed, it's 14, there's no issues then with the vehicles that you use. Okay, that was my only comment that I had. Otherwise, I think it's reasonable. And then, they would apply for a building permit, and those things regarding building code requirements and fastening the building would be reviewed by either engineering or the building inspectors for approval at that point in time if we grant site plan approval. All right?
Okay.
So,
So
Mr.
now
Flom,
what's the next step? We just,
Yep.
do we come back?
Mr.
to that?
I'm sorry. Should we have a resolution for the next meeting, approvals, or anything extra we need to do?
Not that I'm aware of.
As long as it meets all the zoning requirements.
You guys could choose to call for a public hearing, although on this one, it's kind of like we, probably typically wouldn't unless we see some major impacts, but.
I'm not even sure how many people would show up, although there are neighbors, commercial neighbors in the area.
I mean, I'm okay with following a process that has the public hearing and the tentative resolution in the same meeting for our next meeting. If
You don't have to. Site plan, you guys choose to call the public hearings. You usually don't hold them for tenant change. And you do hold them for, kind of, more thorough site plan reviews. This one's kind of like right in the middle. So you would, weigh in on whether or not you felt that it was needed.
Yeah. Didn't they, so just confirm something for us, Ms. Gagnon. Wasn't there a structure there a couple of years ago that was removed?
There was a dilapidated structure that had collapsed, not in the same exact position.
The same area.
The same area, correct.
Yeah, closer to the road, it was an eyesore, if I recall.
Yes.
It was what?
It was an eyesore.
Yeah, it was completely dilapidated. The roof had collapsed in on it, and we took it down and removed it.
Which we just did ourselves because that's what we do. So.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. So we took it down and disposed of it properly because it was actually dangerous.
Yeah.
If anybody had ever gotten back in there, they could have gotten hurt. But it was a 2-story building. When we bought it, that it was there. It was already on the property. So
Sure. I mean, I don't know if Laura, if you or Kevin, if you're looking for a recommendation, I would agree with Mr. Khan on the public hearing if it were a more complicated or a new greenfield type of development, but because of the desire to have a solution for winter, you know, if we can do something to move it along, as long as it's within our standard practices, I'd be in favor of that.
thank you.
Let me ask the applicant, Ms. Gagnon, the other business like Jackson's, are they aware that you're going to put up this structure? Have you talked to anybody down there?
We haven't, but we have a decent relation with them. I don't think they would mind, but we could always ask them.
Would you expect any concerns from?
I do not. Like I said, we don't have the closest relationship. It's not like we're best friends, but we have a good working relationship as neighbors. And
I mean, they've been over to our place. We've been over to theirs. Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of us, we all try to support each other down there because there's only 3 of us down there. So like this, when we got our backyard fixed this year with the gravel to get ready for this, we also had extra gravel. So we graveled that road that we use, that Brightview uses, and that Jackson uses. We went ahead and we had extra gravel. So we paid the guys to just lay the gravel by us on the road so that we all had a better ride, because that road is treacherous. It's just very difficult to drive on, and it's full of potholes. It's difficult. And so like things like that. And there were a couple times Brightview came over and we were having a few snowstorms that were bad. They came over and helped us plow, just came over friendly. Sandy, I think his name is Sandy from Jackson. He's been over, checked out what we did over there and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
we all have a very good relationship.
Yeah. Laura, to the letter of the process that you're saying that we actually do not need to call a public hearing.
It's discretionary for site plan.
Yeah. So then, based on everything that's been said and what we know of the area down there, in terms of the number of people that run businesses, my discretion fall on the side then that we don't need a public hearing.
Okay. Does anybody have any input from other board members? Have any concerns about not having a public hearing? I think we already decided we'd have a resolution on for approval for the January 11th meeting. We have time to have a public hearing too, and a resolution the same night if we feel that we need to have one.
Yeah. So I probably moved a little bit like that.
I'm in favor of avoiding a public hearing, but I have a couple questions that I didn't get to ask before we got a consensus on the resolution. I just wanted to know a little more about the decision to not pour a concrete slab underneath this large carport, as well as the decision to demolish a existing garage. I noticed in looking at Street View that there is a concrete slab that might be able to accommodate 2 of your trucks if you wanted to put a carport to cover 2 trucks for the purposes you've outlined. And I just think before we vote on a resolution, it would be nice to see more official documentation on the construction of this, its weather rating, and the method which it will be fastened to the gravel underneath, and the reasoning behind choosing gravel, if it's just budgetary or timeline concerns. I understand it'd be pretty hard to pour a concrete slab in winter, so I'm sensitive to that, but I'd just like to understand kind of how you evaluated your options there.
Yes. So when we were reaching out and speaking with the retailer of it, of the steel buildings, they said that for them it makes no structural difference, no safety difference. There's no difference in what their building was, whether they put it on concrete or they put it on gravel. They said even if they put it on level ground, they could still secure it. So as far as that goes, we didn't want to dig up and pour a concrete slab when they said that there was no difference.
And where we were going to put it, okay, there's that stream that runs there. So we were trying to be sensitive to the stream too. Although we will be way off the stream with the setbacks, you still don't want to go disrupting all that land around that stream. You just don't, I don't want to, I don't know, just take a chance of disrupting the stream at all. And the other place where you were talking about wasn't a garage. It was a leftover barn-like structure that you couldn't enter.
Yeah,
It
so when,
wasn't a garage that we could have used. When it was left there, I'm sure the town had probably asked the previous owners to take it down. That's how dangerous it was. And I know Mr. Blau, is it Blau? When he was down looking at the property with my husband, they had seen that and talked about that. And that was one thing that we had discussed with him, that we had planned on taking that down because it was dangerous. And that area is just not big enough for the trucks that we have. It's just not.
Yeah, when we moved in, the entire roof on that garage-ish building was collapsed right to the ground. So that building was just, there was nothing you could do with it. And then the other thing with that is having two trucks out of the elements, if we were just put over the concrete slab, really wouldn't achieve what we're trying to achieve with the amount of material that we move in a day. You'd still have the majority of our trucks sitting out with material and them getting rained on.
And we'd have to, the setbacks there aren't as clear, right? Because it's side to side. We only have 100 feet side to side. We're going back, and the way we're taking it, that was another reason, was that we wanted to make sure that we were within what Niskayuna said our setbacks were. And the way that we showed you on the map that we sent in, that has clear setbacks. We have plenty enough room on either side, and we can move it far enough away from the back setback and from the front road where it's plenty enough room where we're not encroaching on anybody. But the other way would be difficult because we're only 100 feet wide. So if we tried to put it there, we'd be encroaching on our setbacks, our side setbacks.
Well, let me just say, I really applaud your efforts in adapting to the challenges that COVID brought your business. You guys didn't decide, we're going to do less volume because these shelters and these not-for-profits aren't accepting junk. We're gonna adapt and evolve. And so to that end, it's great to see that you guys are expanding your operations. And I'm just, question to me is, from a long-term view, will this mean that you have a prolonged need for more indoor space, and does pouring a foundation and having a more permanent looking structure with doors that can be secured benefit you in the long run and prevent the need for further changes to the site?
I don't think so. I mean, I think
so I could answer some of Mr. McPartland's questions. So these are generally a pre-engineered engineered metal buildings. And this one's rated for 115 mile-an-hour winds with a 65 pound per square foot snow load. My guess is even though they're based out of North Carolina, we could ask to see if they have a New York State engineered stamp. A lot of these will have a reciprocity from state to state that would meet the code basically here.
Really quick, I don't know if we provide this for you, but on one of the things that we have, it does have a New York State stamp for the engineering.
And we can provide that. Yeah.
So yes, we have that documentation.
And generally, I think that we'll call it a foundation system. Normally, these buildings are on some sort of heavy duty wood dunnage that everything sits onto. We could find out if there's rods that get anchored into the ground. Or is it just the sheer weight and the size of this with the cross bracing and the way that it's all anchored together is what actually holds it down. Sometimes they do drive rods into the ground. Other times they sit on concrete pylons. It just depends on what the system is. But they're utilitarian buildings, but they are adaptable. So if down the line, I think if you did decide that you wanted to enclose the buildings or add doors, I think there's other kits that you can buy with these that this model or something similar to it could add to it, run electricity to the building and modify it in the future.
That is true. That's what they tell you, that you can modify them if you need to. I mean, I don't see that, but we absolutely probably could. But they do anchor them. I don't remember the exact how they do it, but I don't think it's just the weight of it. I think it is anchored because they said that that's why you needed specific things that we had.
And to speak to future need for indoor space, I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think as far as we are with warehouse space for storing material, we're probably at our peak as far as when we're going to need as most of it. Because once the charities start opening up and running more, I mean, barring any other future pandemics or any other catastrophes that cause them
Hopefully not for another 100 years
to shut her up, you know, we could probably double, triple our business in the next 5 years and not have as much material as we have to process through our facility right now. And with that, as far as the truck space for parking, as far as our 5-year business model goes, we'll never exceed, and this is with growth, we'll never exceed the need for 7 trucks. So, you know, 15, 20 years down the road, I guess, you know, I can't really see that far ahead, but this would set up our facility at least for the next 5 to 10 years, not needing any adjustments for any size growth.
Okay, thank you. All right, so hopefully you're satisfied, Mr. McPartland. Because what I think I hear is that we're going to have a resolution for approval for the January 11th meeting, and we're not going to have a public hearing. Is anybody opposed to that? Okay, so no public hearing and a resolution, you know, for tentative approval on the January 11th meeting is what I hear. Okay.
And then do you just want us to send those things in that Mr. Darpino asked for? We'll just send them in to you, Laura? Okay.
Yep.
I thought I already did. I must have missed it. That's my bust. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, and we would obviously double check all that for building permit as well. But yeah, we can provide all that to planning.
Right.
Okay.
And there's zero authority behind this statement I'm going to make, but it might be worthwhile with your good relationship with Jackson just to, you know, at least let them know that it's, you know, at least let them know it's coming and maybe show them a picture or something. And obviously, if you do see an issue there, you can let Laura know.
Absolutely. I think that's a good idea. And we'll talk to Brightview too, because they're right next to us also. So I think that's a good idea.
That would be great because it's a good balance. It costs it costs the town money to do a public hearing, and I think that those guys would be the only ones that were notified.
Yeah.
So if you guys have a relationship, it would be great to just get an email saying that they're in support, so the planning board knows, and that's a good balance for that project based, you know, on past precedents and stuff like that.
Okay, good. That's what we'll do then. We'll go over and talk to them this week.
Yep. And
We're a bunch of nice guys.
Yeah, and what's positive, there's no area variances required. So that
was
helps the situation. That way, if they do have concerns or if they want to do something similar themselves in the future, they would have to follow, you know, the setbacks themselves. So we're not going to get any special dispensation here. You're going to follow the code. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you. Good. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, and thanks for making that statement, Chairman Walsh. That was in the back of my mind too, the standardization. But at the end of the day, the drawing meets the, you know, it meets the code that it needs to meet. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be in touch with you, Laura. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chris, for volunteering, and we'll have a resolution next meeting. Okay, that's it for discussion items, and so it brings us to the reports portion of the meeting.
Well, hang on. So they do know that the resolution, our next meeting is in January, right?
Yes, January 11th, if they're still there. Yep.
Okay, so any aspirations for December is not there, right? So. Okay.
Yep. Okay, reports, Laura, Rivers Ledge and the Fusco project updates.
Yeah, and actually just to follow up on what Cengiz just said, we actually advertised that, you know, our January meeting would be virtual in the call for the public hearing. So, I mean, things might be getting a little better, but because we sort of have to make that call now, we just made the call for the first meeting in January to be virtual. We can reassess later. Yeah, so Rivers Ledge started up blasting and has actually been working with us on a building permit for their first building. So we have a couple drawings of their new facades. We've sent them to the architectural review board. I think I don't know if David's actually looked at them. And you know, we're working through that. And they are finalizing their permits to do utilities potentially actually through the winter on Aqueduct Road. Because barring like a 5-foot snowstorm, which would make everyone unhappy except for me, that you can get a lot of work done.
Wednesday, you mean?
Yeah, I just keep looking because I would love for it to snow, but it's like 50% chance we're not getting anything. I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah. I don't
So
think
they're gonna try to do the majority of the utility work over the winter if they can and into early spring. And Fusco has, I don't know if you guys have been by recently, like I think the site looks a lot better. So they went out and they insulated the foundation and they did backfill and they rough graded. And then they buttoned down the site for winter. So it's hayed, it's stabilized, and it should be okay. It's not perfect. I talked to them about the pile of soil that's very close to the road, that soil that they plan to reuse. And there was a couple of reasons they couldn't store it anywhere else. And obviously at that point, they weren't really going to move it. So not that happy with the soil pile, but in the balance, I think the site is pretty buttoned up, topped off, and I'm ready for the winter.
Okay.
And they will not be doing construction on it during the winter. Their plan would be to start the construction in the spring if they choose to move forward with themselves, or market it over the winter and then have somebody else move forward with the construction in the spring.
Okay, thanks, Laura. And
Laura, was that last thing you mentioned part of their plan from the beginning, or?
No, I think a lot of that is because material costs have gone up and the contractor himself may be in a kind of different fiscal situation than when he originally came before the board. But I have received regular interest in those apartments. People are really would love the opportunity to live in a new apartment and be able to walk to ShopRite, be able to walk to the library, be able to walk to town hall, be on that multi-use path that's now going to connect to Blatnick Park. So we get a lot of interest in it. So, and I shared it with him, whether he chooses to build it or someone else chooses to build it. I think that the demand is there. And so, when things calm down and construction costs maybe normalize a little bit, I think you'll see that site move. I don't think it's going to sit there indefinitely. There's a lot of demand for those apartments.
Laura, could you clarify when you say it was somebody else building? Is it still Fusco's? Is he bringing another subcontractor, or is he selling the entire package?
Yeah, he's mentioned that he may sell it, right?
Oh, okay.
So, and he'll make that call over the winter. His originally when the cost of the wood and he cut that down, it was, I'm selling it. I'm cutting all ties.
Yeah.
But I think because things did normalize a little bit, he's now considering that he may do it in the spring. But I think he'll watch the winter and then he'll either sell it, and I think it'll pick up pretty quickly, or he'll do it in the spring.
See, no comments from Michael on this point, huh?
So Laura, how long is what's the duration of a building permit? I mean, how long how long does he have to sell it?
Well, the building permits are issued for 1 year, but the only time that the town would retract a building permit is if, action wasn't being taken on it and that, there was a public safety issue or some kind of a notice and order that had gone out. If a year expires, they do renewals. And they escalate. So if you get within, 2 or 3 years of having open building permit, it can get more expensive to renew it. But, the first renewal, I think on a project like that, they don't typically finalize within a year on a building like that. They would typically see at least one renewal, sometimes two.
Laura, can we reasonably expect that a buyer would adhere to all the stipulations that were made in approving this project?
They have to, right? So when you guys put conditions in your zoning, in your site plan approvals, they actually by sort of fact become kind of zoning requirements on that property. And so it's regardless of the owner. If somebody's out of compliance with a condition that's written into the site plan approval, the building inspector can go out there and notice and order them for violating their zoning.
Right. And
that goes for even something like the elevation and the exterior design.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that we included it in the site plan approval, which I believe we did because it was so specific. Yes, they would have to meet that. If they were going to change it, they would have to come back to the planning board. Mm-hmm.
Cengiz made a point, and I just have to make the observation. I finance multifamily rental housing all across the state. And during this period, I have closed on construction loans in the middle of the pandemic throughout the season. And I have yet to have any builders walk away from a project telling me,
Yeah.
sorry, price of lumber's going up.
Yeah.
It doesn't really add up to me. And right, Jenkins, you smoked me out.
That's why I poked you.
I mean, I agree because we've actually had a fair amount of single family homes go up, and we were interested during that conversation with the single family, Amador is still putting up single family homes.
Yeah.
And we wondered if it was taking a huge bite out of the profits there and if he was considering slowing down because of the cost of lumber. And he was not, but
It's a completely opposite. I mean, the real estate market right now, especially around here, is booming. The housing market, let me say, not the real estate, the housing market. So
yeah,
anyway, it's just a little.
Those are his stated reasons, and is he violating zoning by doing what he's doing? No. What we could do to the best of our ability is button up the site. If there's like a lesson learned, and I mean, this is something that Alexis and I could research, like if we can put kind of a time frame, but I mean, site plan approvals time frame is 2 years, and then building permit is, a couple other more years. So if a project isn't moving along as fast as we would like to see, especially because it's in the town center overlay district, is that great for us? No, but is it outside of what, can occur on these projects? I'm not sure that we really missed anything or had oversight that we missed on this.
I mean, for whatever it's worth, and I'm just putting, 2 and 2 together here with everything that we said and Michael said, right? It actually might be a profitable transaction for him to actually sell it.
Yeah.
Not a cost savings transaction, but actually a profitable transaction.
I'm sure that would be the intention. Yeah.
Yeah, the applicant is under no affirmative obligation to truly disclose what the circumstances are as to the cost. He could be strapped. He could be, he could have made too many obligations. We don't know the circumstances, but we'd like to see this completed and executed and constructed and leased up. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Are we all set? Discussion of the Fusco property? If we are, I think there's one thing left on reports, ARB update. Was that Mr. Henry? You're going to give us an ARB update?
We hadn't really planned on much of an update. We put a little note in there that the ARB is satisfied with 2804 Aqueduct Road. Though they had a couple of meetings with the applicant that went very well, and we're just responding to the condition in the resolution that they approve the final design, which they have.
Okay. Any questions on the review board? Any comments? Anything, Dave, you'd like to add, or anybody?
I think we've been a little busier than we had initially anticipated with the board. They've had a bunch of projects come through. Mr. Ritmo's project is going to be reviewed this month also. And Joel's been very, very eager to meet with the board on his various applications that he has in, and has had some really good positive feedback. I know that Clark is working on some marketing stuff to get our information up onto the website, for the town website, with some bios of the members. There is one board member that is going to be resigning. However, we are seeking out a couple other applicants to fill some positions there and build the board up at least a couple members.
Great.
And I guess, Mr. David, do the board members feel, that do they feel, what's the right word I'm looking for? Fulfilled and accomplished enough, because this is it looks like it is becoming a big commitment, right? And I think it's, we all think it's a great addition that, to as a new standing board in Niskuna. So I guess are the board members happy, and do they, like doing this and want to keep doing it?
I think Clark can probably answer this question along with me, but I think so far I've spoken and reached out to each of the 3 current board members, and one of them specifically is very involved in a lot of the projects and has really enjoyed it. The other one has been involved and is going to continue to serve serve on the board. And then the other one just was in an initial meeting and had other prior commitments that couldn't be there. But generally, I think they've been very receptive to it. They've really steered a few projects, and the couple ones that I've been on have been able to point out some points of each project to say, okay, these are generally pretty good, but maybe you should look at this or you could look at that. And I think we're getting some better feedback and some better information from the developers and the builders, so that aesthetically the buildings that are going up are going to be a better long-term solution. And I know that, like with Mr. Ritmo, he was very concerned about budget, and we told him that one of the points of working with the Architectural Review Board is to review options, and hopefully out of that could maybe be some cost savings, or there could be other options that if he was thinking about doing something, they may steer him or make a recommendation that wouldn't necessarily be adding to his budget, but hopefully working within the parameters of what he ultimately wants to do. And that's sort of one of the tasks that we remind some of the board members to be cognizant of when they're working with applicants. So generally, I think it's been pretty good. My feeling is that I think we need a couple more members, because, like you said, we've had a lot of projects come through, and it wasn't really a quiet winter. So I think just between now and then what we're foreseeing coming down the pipe in the spring, having up to 4 or 5 members might be good, because then just like we take on different project leads, I think we could see, a couple members on a bigger development working on specific projects.
I'm just looking at this resolution where the town board created the Architectural Review Board, and you do have the authority to have at least 3, but not more than 5. So, I mean, you could appoint 2 more. And if you think that you need more than 5, you can let me know, and we could propose an amendment to the town board to increase the membership. And that would likely be done in the first week of January at the org meeting. So I think if you can be in touch with Laura, if you think that you would like to exercise that option, so I can get that drafted as a resolution.
Yeah, this is Clark. I would agree with what Dave said about the feeling of the 2 other board members. I think they're very much on board. And part of our approach to getting some more marketing materials out there is we're not even tapping into people doing significant building permits for additions or things like that. So our thinking is that once the board becomes a little bit more recognized within the website and the town, someone who's just doing an addition may seek out the guidance of the ARB as well. So we anticipate even more work for them. So I think we spent a little time in the beginning trying to decide if we were going to come up with recommendations for fences and things like that. And the board members have kind of evolved it towards what we're doing now on some of these larger projects. So I think they're engaged and happy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else, Laura or Mr. Henry, under reports? No? Do you have anything, Alexis, for us?
No, just that I would continue to, anticipate being remote through the winter. And also, I'm going to likely be out on maternity leave, kind of like any day now. So Paul Briggs is probably going to be stepping in for me, or else the former deputy town attorney, Elena Finnan, is going to be doing some work. So there'll obviously be a lawyer who's advising, and, maybe I'll be bored one night and tune in with the newborn.
And we'll try not to quote you in the minutes. And
yeah. And congratulations on the recent marriage, and good luck with the addition to the family. We'll be thinking about you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, and that brings us to commission business. Let's see, Mr. Oster, you have anything for us tonight? Did you log back in? I can't remember. You did not? Okay. Mr. D'Arpino?
Nothing further tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPartland?
Nothing further.
Thanks. Mr. Khan? No?
Nothing.
Okay,
Sorry.
and Mr. Scributennis?
Laura, I'm sorry, 2 quick issues. Route 7. There seems to be I'm sorry, I drove by it on too many occasions and I didn't make the observation. Somebody is grading and grub on the north side of Route 7, I think east of Pierce Road. There seems to be some significant site work grading. There's a very large diameter tree that's been cut, that's been taken down. Do you know what's going on there?
We did go out and do some enforcement on that property. It is a large amount of clearing. And I believe the property owner has submitted a building permit in response to the notice and order.
Okay.
We have no planning plans for that property. And aside from, the enforcement action that we've taken on it, like no direct contact with the property owner on future plans, but he does have to address the violation with us through the building department, just through zoning. And through that, like if something does get submitted, obviously I'll give you guys a heads up. It is very noticeable and it's under enforcement and
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm glad Michael brought it up, but I mean, that person did get a building permit, right? To do.
I'm not initially. They're currently under a notice and order and have submitted a building permit for it.
Wow. So that's pretty bold, doing it right here on Route 7.
It is bold. We're one of the only towns that take building permits for clearing. So that isn't always known to people who live here, but it doesn't, necessarily matter. You can't clear that amount of land without a building permit because we need to review, what the impacts are to losing, mostly for erosion and sediment control issues. And there should, the engineering department has gone out to look at, it's a very limited stumping. It was mostly clearing, but that still impacts the way the water flows and stuff. So the engineering department looks at it, our building inspectors look at it, and we'll work on it from there. But yeah, we are working on it, but there hasn't been any formal submittal of anything except for a building permit to clear the trees.
And I'm sorry, one other property, Route 7, on the corner of Mohegan and Route 7 north side on the northwest corner. It's one of these properties, it appears that it's unoccupied, vacant, with a white picket fence. It's a 2-story Center Hall Colonial that's yellow in nature. And there's a large tree came down and took out a small picket fence on the side. It looks largely it looks abandoned. I don't know if that's made your attention. If you go to Google Maps, it looks like it's 2285.
I can send a building inspector out. So it's the corner of Mohegan and Route 7.
Yeah, it's a yellow vinyl house. It's an attractive lot. But it's clearly, you can see note the front door, it's decaying. There's rust on the front door. It's decayed. There's clearly, it's dilapidated at least.
It's hard to miss. He'll see it. So it's interesting. Whenever I drive by these places, I always make the assumption that, everyone's aware, but I'm glad Michael's brought it up.
It's on my list for
these
a year
buildings
now.
are very visible.
But that's not the clearing behind Harry's that you're asking about.
No.
It's different.
Different.
Okay. I'll have my guys go look.
I did notice Harry's as well, but I'll leave that for another time.
I think we had that as a report the last time, and I can share the plans that he has with you for his property. But that is just a retaining wall, and we're not allowing him to expand parking lot or anything. So it just falls under a regular building permit as long as he's not changing anything on the property. Oh yeah, okay. So Harry's is on Onondaga, and you're talking about yeah, so probably 2285.
2285. And again, if you drive by the house, you'll see it's been in a slow state of decay. I've never seen an occupant. I've never seen anybody there. I don't see cars parked there, but it's clearly been suffering from some form of neglect over the last couple of years. You'll note it.
Yeah, we'll go check it out.
I think there's a posting on the front door.
Okay, we have a couple of them. If it's a Route 7 address, I know of a couple of them that we even have to mow the grass and put it on the taxes on a couple of properties on Route 7. That may be one of our hangnails, but I don't know the addresses off the top of my head.
Yeah, Dave, you're right. You could see on Google Maps, you could see the notice on the front door.
and it's probably a kind of a serial offender.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scributinus, and the planning department, building department will take a look at that. All right. Mr. Laflamme, anything for us tonight? No? Okay, and Ms. Gold?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you, and Ms. Shen-
Couldn't find the mute button. Nothing more.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Ms. Shenfield?
No, just an observation. I drove by the JCC recently, and I don't know if it was based on our recommendations or just they're changing the content, but they've dropped their sign to 3 lines, and it's far easier to read.
Yep, thank
Better.
you.
They're struggling a bit with it because I drive by it every day. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but like for a little while there was like a line along it and it was brighter at the top and not really functioning at the bottom. And I was like, this is why I hate electronic signs.
Yeah, it was almost like two-tone or something. I was like, I didn't know what they were doing, but the letters are larger, so it's at least easier to decipher. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Daisy. All right, and the other thing I've got is the usual, thank you for your service for the past year at the end of the year here. Appreciate everybody's commitment and have a great holiday and a happy new year to all of you. And thanks always to the planning department for the hard work.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for your leadership,
Thank you, Laura.
Chairman.
Thank you, Clark.
Yeah, well,
Alright.
thanks to you all for sticking in there with all this kind of tough times and strange ways that we have our meeting. You guys have all been fantastic. We really
Yeah.
appreciate having such a great board as well.
Yeah, and I think you do a great job. We've gotten through this year pretty good. I think quality's still there, so I appreciate it. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Khan and seconded by, waiting for a hand or a sign. There it is. Mr. Laflamme. Thank you, Mr. Laflamme.
Okay.
All right, so all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none opposed, we'll adjourn the meeting at 8:42 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody.
Happy and blessed
Thank you.
holidays, everyone. Thank you for your leadership.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.